Hello and welcome to In the Light, Growing Your Soul with me, Anna Isabel. And today I'm really excited because I have Nickita Stark with me. Hello, Nickita.
Hi, Anna. Thank you so much for having me today.
So the audience is probably wondering why I'm so excited that you're here. And I'd better explain. So Nickita is a holistic maternity care practitioner. And so basically, she's all about giving mothers the best maternity experience possible naturally and allowing babies to have the best births possible naturally. So, given that I've been for a long time helping women using hypnosis to do just that, I thought this is a kindred spirit. So, tell us, Nickita, about what you do.
Okay, so first of all, I must make this really clear, right? I mean, if you know who I am and you've been following my work, it's obvious that I'm very pro-natural, but I also have a strong belief that women are on their own path and there should be no dogma, no acquiescing to things. It should be about the right timing for you and what you can absorb at any given moment. There should be no force into medical interventions and there should be no force into natural childbirth. It has to be woman centered. So, yes, I definitely, I mean, statistically, natural birth is a lot safer, but I'm not here to say you should do it because it's going to be helpful.
Exactly. And it's when I'm working with women, it's so vital because my aim is to remove fear
Yeah.
and to be confident. So this is some want to do it one way, others want to do it another way. And it's if they're looking at a cesarean and they're really afraid, then and they absolutely believe that this is the only way forward, then my job is to help them have the best experience of a cesarean birth. And so that's really, really important. So you're absolutely right. And so within those parameters, um, you've just said natural birth is statistically safer.
Yes.
And we are led to believe the opposite.
Yes. So should I just give you a bit of background of why I started this?
Yes.
Okay. Nearly 16 years ago, I had my first baby and I was like chewed up and spat out by the system. Um, I did have a deep feeling that what I was being told to do wasn't right, but I wasn't authentic enough, or didn't have the confidence to reach the authenticity needed to assert myself and not to acquiesce to what they wanted me to do. Because I think we grow up with this flawed premise that the doctors, the system know best and they have our best interests at heart. And I kind of fell victim to that. So I had a really traumatic birth. I was induced because I was overdue. I mean, the overdue thing is insane. I still can't believe that they're managing to get away with using that, but they are. So I agreed to an induction, cascade of intervention, and I could not believe what I'd just been through. It was so traumatic. Um, and it wasn't until I spoke to my grandmother that a light bulb went off in my head, and she said something so simple to me, but it was the world to me. I said to her, Nanny, how did you do this 8 times? It's the most awful thing I've ever been through. Like, are you mad? Why would you do that so many times? Trauma is so normal in birth. And how could you repeat that? And she said, trauma is common, not normal. And just that, I was like, oh, okay. So I got obsessed with childbirth education. I briefly dipped my toe into midwifery. I didn't like it. It felt wildly uncomfortable. It felt like a conveyor belt. Um, and midwife is meant to mean with woman, but as far as I could tell, it meant with system. And this was years ago. And I thought, no, this doesn't align with me. I kept seeing sabotage after sabotage, and I thought none of this is necessary. I'm not saying every intervention is unnecessary, because we are very, very thankful and grateful, as from when push comes to shove, that we have this amazing medical advancements and technology to help us when needed. But birth is almost portrayed like it's a medical procedure that happens naturally if you're lucky, not the other way around. So women are programmed to believe that their bodies are going to fail them, when really what they don't see is the macro view of the reason their bodies have failed them is because of the system, and the systematic, I want to say, abuse that happens, obstetric violence, and this handmaiden tale we've got going on of do as the doctor says, you're not qualified. I don't know if you've seen that amazing Monty Python sketch where John Cleese is acting as an obstetrician, and this woman is wheeled in on a gurney and she's really panicking, and he's like, bring me the machine that goes blah blah blah, like using all these amazing tools, and she says to him, what do I do? And he looks down at her and goes, nothing, dear, you're not qualified. And I thought, right, that sums it up. That sums it up beautifully. So shortly afterwards, I trained as a doula, and a doula is a non-clinical practitioner who provides women with practical and emotional support. That still wasn't quite right for me. And over the years, I met some incredible women who are traditional midwives and incredible, which we now have a word for, a birth keeper, which is what I now do. I learnt in an unconventional training, I suppose. I never did anything formal, but it evolved. Anyway, fast forward to 2020, I was pregnant with my second baby. Yes, huge age gap, but I'd lost 9 babies between the two of them. And it's okay. The ones that are meant to be here are here. So I I found myself pregnant in lockdown, and I thought, what's going on? I smell a rat, something's not right. And independent midwives, many of my friends were independent midwives, they lost their insurance during 2020. And I thought, oh, that's it. That's women's last chance for autonomy. Gone. I never set out to create When Push Comes to Shove as it is today. I was just so passionate about thinking, no, women have a right to choose. Why should they be going in giving birth alone in a medical environment that is not conducive to a nice physiological ecstatic birth, wearing a bloody mask? I mean, can I actually say that we need oxygen? I mean, it's insane. And then women feeling frightened, traumatized, and I could see the C-section rate gradually climbing and climbing and climbing, more intervention climbing. And long story short, When Push Comes to Shove has now evolved into the world's only decentralized maternity structure. So women don't have to go and birth in the system. They can birth with us. They can have a toe in the system, and we'll help you navigate it. I have trained 130 natural birth practitioners in 3 years, and we now have a directory that spans 10 countries. So that's what I've done in a nutshell. Yeah, my little story.
Your little story is just a story of miracles, because this is born out of your passion, and your passion because of your experience and the recognition. And you know what you were talking about there, one of the things that I always stress when I'm working with pregnant women is the importance of calm and joy and feeling safe, particularly at the time of the birth, because as you will know, oxytocin is so important in helping to make this as comfortable an experience as possible. And we are not going to be producing that hormone if we are producing adrenaline and cortisol as instead. So what you described there, the fear around labor, is for the thing that I'm always very conscious of. And you add to that medicalization, which is so alien and so intensely frightening for so many women. You add to that the constant programming in films and on television, where this poor woman looks like she's about to die because she's screaming in agony. And women are afraid of giving birth. And I can think of at least one case where somebody was miscarrying continually, and and she came for some help in understanding her emotions around pregnancy. She was very conflicted. She desperately wanted a baby. She was terrified of giving birth. It was quite an extraordinary insight. And so we had to get rid of that to help her so that her body could accept being pregnant, actually.
Body does exactly what the mind tells it to. And I think many people do have gaps in the knowledge of overall health. We have a very Western mentality of understanding health, which is just the body, and we put a band-aid on it rather than understand the root cause. Now, I believe only three things cause disease. Only three: toxicity, deprivation, and trauma. And each of those things are on a level of mind, body, and soul. So the body is pretty self-explanatory. Toxicity, there's something in your body that shouldn't be there. Deprivation, you're depriving your body of something. And trauma, you've been in a car accident, kicked by a donkey, I don't know, something like that. But on a level of mind, and this is where we really need to integrate Eastern wisdom to understand all the components of health. Toxicity, who's in your life that shouldn't be? Or more to the point, you're your own jailer. What are you telling yourself? What is your story? What is your script in your head? Deprivation, what are you depriving yourself of emotionally? Do you need to work on your boundaries? Do you need to work on asserting yourself? Give yourself a bit more love? And trauma, generational trauma. We have been handmaidens to the system for many generations now. There's a video that I show my students in. I have a 1-year birth attendant course with another company. Myself and my friend Angela co-founded Artemis Birth Attendant Academy, and this is for those who want, instead of doing midwifery, to do a natural alternative. It's a year-long course, and the first video I show is of obstetric violence. It's awful. I'll try and clean it up a bit. Essentially, there's a male obstetrician in between a woman's legs with his fingers inside her without her asking. I mean, let's just look at that for a second. We have been programmed to believe it's absolutely acceptable for a stranger to put their hands inside of us. For what? What does it do? We need to see how dilated you are. Why? Seriously, think about it. Why? Because you can go from 3 centimeters to 10 in 10 minutes, or it could take 8 hours. It's not a crystal ball. So this man is there with his fingers inside her saying, right, your vagina is too small. I'm going to cut you. And her mum is in the background. And this woman is going, no, no, we haven't even tried yet. We haven't even given the baby a chance to calm down. And he went, do you want to go home? I'm the doctor. I've trained. You haven't. And the mother is sitting there going, listen to the doctor. Do as the doctor says. And the doctor takes a pair of scissors and cuts her perineum 7 times. And she's screaming. This is common. So this woman has been set up for failure. One, if you want a natural birth, don't go to an obstetrician. And I do not mean to be callous and hurtful to any amazing obstetricians out there, because I know some wonderful obstetricians. But generally speaking, you wouldn't go to a mechanic to get your nails done, would you? Don't go to an obstetrician for a natural birth. They don't see them. If you had a room full of 100 obstetricians and said, put your hand up who've seen a natural physiological birth at home, not one of them would do it. They don't know what it looks like. They're there for when things go wrong. They are masters at their craft when things go wrong. They know how to do a safe cesarean section. They know which drugs to use if all else fails. But to think that you're going to a doctor for advice on a natural physiological process, that's not their role. Birth is not a medical procedure, it's a physiological procedure.
Okay, so let's think about this, because we're saying actually this is a natural process and on the whole it's very safe. But we have been led to believe that prior to these tremendous medical advancements, childbirth was incredibly dangerous and many women died during childbirth. Now,
Yep.
so if this is true, we have to be wrong, don't we?
It depends. It's not a macro view that people are getting. So yes, women used to die all the time in childbirth. They still do, by the way. And for three main reasons. One, poverty. So if you are in an overcrowded environment, you're malnourished, disease can spread like wildfire. That's a recipe for disaster. That is the main reason why women still die in childbirth now. Second one, you have a genuine medical ailment. Let's say you've been in a car accident and you've broken your pelvis. That's going to be a mechanical issue in birth. The third reason why birth goes wrong, and the most common in my experience, is over medicalization. And that was true 100 years ago when men started saying, right, we're taking over here, lay on your back. Why? Would you go for a poo lying down? You know, it doesn't help gravity to bring the baby down. You need to listen to your body. And not many women will lay on their back if they're listening to their body. But it's easier for the practitioners to see what's going on if you're laying on your back. If you lay on your back while you give birth, your pelvic outlet decreases by 30%. And we wonder why we get so many shoulder dystocias and needs for episiotomies. It's crazy. So yes, women did used to die in childbirth, and they still do today. If you're watching and you like a good read, I recommend a book called Childbirth Wisdom from the World's Oldest Societies by Judith Goldsmith. And what she alludes to is in healthy indigenous tribes, cultures around the world that are not in survival mode, that are well nourished and they have a community around them, childbirth mortality is next to zero. So yeah, we have a narrative, but we don't have all the pieces.
Exactly. And I think this is the thing, is that when they talk about the life expectancy going up and due to medical advancements, they're not really, it's a bit disingenuous because they're not factoring in the the way in which quality of life improved, at least until relatively recently, from the point of view that homes are warm and not so overcrowded, and there's a significant difference in the quality of life in people's lives. That we're not, well, we're not malnourished, or we have the opportunity to not be malnourished if we're eating the right foods, etc., which would not have been available to the majority of the population in the 1800s earlier. We know that. So that is a huge factor in improving life expectancy. We are, of course, now doing other things which are actually threatening that. But it's a serious factor. And of course, if women are malnourished, they are weak. They're not going to be able to create necessarily as healthy a baby. And if they do, there's going to be risks. It makes complete sense, doesn't it?
I mean, there is another layer to this of medical advancement, which I won't leave out just because I'm pro-natural, because it is true. So another element to why birth has become safer, and I want to be careful how I word this. Have you heard of Freakonomics?
Freakonomics.
Yeah, Freakonomics. It's a really good documentary and a book where they say they'll take elements that have happened through history, and they've alluded to the fact that, oh, it's because of X, Y, and Z, when really there are more factors at play. So, for example, the crime rate in New York dropping, they were putting it down to the Mayor Giuliani. But really, what happened a decade before is they legalized abortion. So the people that were going to be committing the crime haven't been born. So there are so many, that this is what I'm talking about, a freakonomics sort of thing. So with C-section, it has become safer. And this is a medical advancement. So back in the 50s, they would make vertical incisions. So right down your tummy rather than across. They weren't able to do them as quick as they can now. And as C-sections have become safer, we can't think that we've got better outcomes because C-sections are safer. We have to think maybe because C-sections have become safer, they're being pushed as an alternative rather than a last case resort. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
They are safer, they can be done very quickly, and there are less complications with C-sections before. So maybe in the 40s, when they were doing a C-section, maternal mortality was higher because the C-sections were dangerous. So the very interventions they were trying to use to save women were causing harm. And I really want to talk about this for a moment because it's important. If you look at the last century of the evolution of obstetrics, we know one thing: we don't bloody know enough. In the 30s, they were giving every woman x-rays to measure the size of their pelvis. This was in the States, and I'm sure here too. And that resulted in babies having cancer, so they stopped doing that. Now, I don't need to tell you about thalidomide. They were giving that to women for morning sickness, and look what happened there. In the 90s, they were giving a drug called Cytotec to induce women who had had previous C-sections, and that ended up with thousands of dead babies and ruptured uteruses, so they stopped doing that. And what did they start doing in 2021? So it's
Yes.
trial and error at whose expense?
Yeah. So now you mentioned the overdue baby,
Mm.
and there is so much panic about overdue babies. Tell us what your take on this is.
Okay. So in the 1800s, a guy called Nagel calculated 40 weeks of pregnancy based on the lunar calendar, and we still use it today. We have to look at our menstrual cycle because some women are going to have longer pregnancies, some are going to have shorter. They say these really scary words: if you go over 41 weeks, your chances of stillbirth double. That sounds scary, doesn't it? Double of what? Is it 1 in 5 to 2 in 5, or is it 1 in 500 to 2 in 500? I'm just going to grab something to show you because I think it's really important for any women watching this. You need this book, Am I Allowed? And who wrote the woman that wrote this? Her name was Beverly Beach. She was my mentor, and she was chair of AIMS for 40 years, and she's an incredible woman. But she died last year, this Sunday just gone, so 25th of February she died. And I was stunned that she asked me to write the fifth edition of this book, so I have to carry on her legacy and write the next one, and I'm terrified. But I'll give you from her book some actual statistics when it comes to your chances of stillbirth double. So this is risk of unexplained stillbirth by gestation. At 36 weeks, it's 1 in 556. At 38 weeks, it's 1 in 730. At 40 weeks, it's 1 in 926. And at 42 weeks, it's 1 in 769. Those are statistics. This is data. So when they tell you your risk of stillbirth double, you can ask them, please show me evidence-based information, not guidelines, because guidelines aren't really based on evidence at all. Maternity care is the lowest evidence-based medicine there is. So only 8% of maternity care guidelines are category A evidence-based. That's disgusting. So if you think that you're being told, oh, you got to have a C-section, you've got to be induced, and this is all based on evidence, it's not. You're allowed to ask questions. Please show me proof. Oh, here are the guidelines. Guidelines aren't proof. Guidelines are guidelines. Where are the evidence? Where's the studies? Like they'll say you've got to be induced because you've got a big baby. Oh my, I'm sure we've all heard of someone that said, oh, I had to be induced because my baby was enormous and it was £7. So you're allowed to ask questions. Don't take my word for it. Ask them. The burden of proof is on them. You're not on trial. It's not up to you to prove your body won't fail you. It's up to them to prove it will. So in the case of a potential big baby, you can ask them things like, please define big, because side note, I've attended births where babies were £11 at home with no tearing. They worry about something called a shoulder dystocia, where a baby's shoulder or both shoulders get stuck from a big baby. So you might want to ask them, what percentage of babies who experienced a shoulder dystocia were induced? Because the worst shoulder dystocia I've seen was with a 5-pounder and the baby was induced. What percentage of babies who are induced end up in the neonatal intensive care unit? What is it normal in nature for babies to outgrow their mothers? Define big. What margin of error do your scans carry? You're allowed to ask these questions. You don't have to just bow to their every whim. And again, don't listen to me. This is about you as a woman. You can listen to what I'm saying to make up your own mind, but don't blindly follow what I say. Don't blindly follow what the NHS say, because you are allowed more data. And if you ask these kind of questions, I call it a version of the Socratic method. So you kind of ask them questions to focus their brains. So they either give you more information to make an informed decision, or you give them rope to hang. Because, and also, like, I can't guarantee a perfect outcome. And if they're saying a hospital birth is safer, ask for proof. Beverly Beach, who wrote Am I Allowed? I saw her say the most incredible thing I've ever heard anyone say to an obstetrician. He was trying to say to her, there's nothing you can't teach me that I don't know about birth. And she said, Mr. whatever his name was, you cannot understand the behavior of birds by observing them in a zoo. And she's so right. Yes, Mr. Obstetrician, you know about everything when it comes to birth in an environment that is not conducive to a natural process. So when we're studying women, look at the actual data, look at the studies. Where did the studies take place? Were they in a scientific environment where there were BP machines and hearing other women give birth and uninvited vaginal exams? Because if we're trying to understand how physiological birth unfolds, do we look at that? Or do we look at home births? What do you think? Run to
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, there's so many parallels in other aspects of life. In dog behaviorism, for instance, comparing dogs to wolves because they happen to be descended, genetically from, they're very similar, but not taking into account that wolves are in the wild and dogs are not. And would it not be better to, if we're going to study dogs who are feral rather than wolves? And this is a huge issue in the dog behaviorist community. Where are we looking? Because we're not studying chimpanzees and deducing things about humanity from that, because there's a difference. And here there is a difference because it's the environment. One is not natural, the other is. And we have to really think about that, because what happens in a lab is not what happens outside the lab, which is one of the very reasons why we have this issue over evidence and what's acceptable evidence and what isn't. And human experience is dismissed because it can't be replicated in a lab. Well, you're absolutely right. We have to consider the impact of being in an unnatural environment upon a woman, particularly when we do know how the hormones play such an important part in the process of giving birth. So this is it's a very powerful point that you've just made. So you've talked about overdue. Let's talk about postnatal depression. What do you feel is it this feeds into in terms of postnatal depression? Because obviously postnatal depression could be due to many things, and women feeling isolated, feeling overwhelmed. But do you feel that the trauma of birthing, when it goes wrong, can lead to postnatal depression?
Yes. I think I don't want to simplify it because there are many layers here, but ultimately, forget pregnancy and birth for a minute. Talking on a very conscious level here. We think in life we've got loads of problems, but we've only got one, and that's the disconnect from ourselves and our authenticity and our relationship to our higher self. I really believe if we all had the ability to drop down into trust, and we do have that ability, but because we are being kept in our egoic mind, because our pineal gland is constantly calcified from our environment, our food, the alcohol we drink, we are unable to connect with our authentic self. And this is the problem I see with women. They're in their heads. So we're a race of people that need black and white. Hospital safe, home birth safe. Well, there are risks with both because birth is not inherently safe. It's not inherently dangerous either. It's safe as life. But I would urge everyone to make a choice here, because in all these systems and establishments, there's a lot of intelligence and intellectual processing going on in order to tell women what to do. But the presence of intelligence without wisdom is dangerous. It ignores women's intuition. It ignores your gut feeling. And I've never seen a woman's intuition wrong, ever, when it comes to birth. Not once. I've seen them in their head about things. When you get in your head, you can't access this. So that is the core problem, right? Now, if you are in your head and you are going through this conveyor belt process, you're not in control. You feel like birth is happening to you. The difference between trauma and no trauma is women surrendering to their bodies, not having any addiction to outcome, but just surrender to the present moment. If women have ended up with an emergency cesarean operation, but along the way, they've made informed decisions. Okay, yep, fine. I feel that you might be right. I will do this. But when women have birth happen to them and they feel like a piece of meat, they've entered the system happy and healthy. They've led downtrodden and traumatized because they feel their bodies have failed them, that they've screwed up being a mum on day one, and their babies were born into a sea of adrenaline and cortisol instead of oxytocin. That's going to do a number on a woman's brain, right? Yeah. Birth is definitely a massive factor in trauma and why it continues. So if a woman has birthed her baby and she's felt out of control and she has felt that it's just happened to her, she's fucked up, excuse my French, because I hear these words all the time from women, that's going to have a ripple effect. She's less likely to be able to breastfeed because she can't release the oxytocin in order to bond with her baby. Then she'll feel like more of a failure. Then it might affect other relationships with children she already has, with her partner. And so the generational trauma will be repeated and repeated and repeated. We have to cut this. It's so important. Yes, my remit is birth, but underneath it all, on the base level, it's a massive disconnect with self and consciousness. We go through life thinking we're separate from one another. We're not. Although we may be in different bodies, We have one mind, one collective consciousness. And what we're doing, we are feeding the beast at the moment. 2020 did a great job of divide and conquer. Oh, anti-vaxxers, they're mental. Or pro-vaxxers, they're mental. Divide and conquer. You're jabbed, you're not jabbed. I'm in this boat, you're in that boat. More division. What we need is a great remembering of who we are. And when we realize we're not separate waves in the ocean, we are the ocean isn't scary anymore. And that doesn't mean to say we have to believe in what others believe, it's authenticity. And when we actually don't need external validation, or we don't need people to agree with us in order for us to be okay, we won't need the prison system. We won't need the maternity system. We will live authentically and we will live in beautiful harmony.
Perfect. That's exactly, absolutely right. And just the very first thing that, one of the very first things you said was where you said intelligence without wisdom. And I, when I'm teaching astrology, that's exactly what I always talk about, that intelligence without wisdom is harmful, because within that is hubris as well, the hubris of thinking that we know more than nature, and that we know more than God, that we know more than, and you can fill in any number of ways that you like, but it's dangerous because it means we stop listening. And the point you made about the need to listen to our bodies, half of my work as a therapist is getting people, at least half, if not more, is getting people to listen to their bodies. Because once we start listening to our bodies, we're tapping into our needs as well. And then it's about having the confidence to follow that through, to understand it and follow it through. So there's so much in what you just said, and the the importance of trusting ourselves instead of looking for validation. It's so huge because uh, this is the hypnotherapist side of me, where I've been interviewed and asked to explain the mechanics of manipulation and why we are so prone to being manipulated. Do you know what? At the heart of it is the need for validation. If we don't need to be validated, it means we are strong in ourselves and we're not afraid to say, no, actually, no, thank you, that's not for me. But if we are constantly looking for validation from others, then it means that we are very vulnerable to being manipulated. And that doesn't mean that we close our ears to sensible advice. Clear, it doesn't. Because if we are confident, we are actually much more likely to listen to other perspectives and to challenge ourselves and to say, oh, well, how does that feel? Does that feel, maybe I need to learn more about that?
Is You're right. That phrase, how does it feel? Not what do I think, how does it feel? That is wisdom at its finest. And I'm sure you are very well versed in Gabor Mate and his understanding of, yeah. So this is what I teach on my courses. So the first module on my courses is you can come and train with me to be a birth practitioner. Now, really, the external stuff, all the intelligence about birth and the physiology and the mechanics of birth, this is secondary. The first module is the most important, and it's our self-development and our spiritual development. The way I see it is this, and Gabor Mate sums this up beautifully. When we're born, we're the most authentic we'll ever be. We are totally one with consciousness. But the problem is we are born to parents who are victims of victims who are in survival mode. So when we're expressing our authenticity as babies or toddlers, we have one role as parents, and that's to keep our children alive. So when we're babies and toddlers, we know deep down, these people keep me alive. If they reject me, I'm not safe. So when we show authenticity and our parents are like, don't do that because it makes me feel like this because I can't self-regulate myself, I have to rely on everyone else to behave exactly how I want. It's really easy to act enlightened when everyone around you is behaving exactly how you want. It's when we're challenged and when our children come along and they're like, oh no, but I'm meant to be sleeping now because I have to do this tomorrow because we don't live in a tribe anymore. The way we live is ridiculous. It should take a village, but women are expected to go to work, do all this, do all that. Anyway, long story short, when our babies come in and they see that being authentic makes them be rejected by their parents, they develop an ego. And the ego is shown in various forms. We've got egoic archetypes like saviors. I have to go around and save everyone. Victims, victim consciousness. Oh, typical, it's happened to me again. We all know a victim. But they will keep repeating those patterns because their ego has taught them to do it to keep them safe. They will subconsciously seek out people in their life that make them feel like that. I see a lot. Then you've got the divas, the child ego, where everything has to be done for me. I can't make a decision. And then we've got the helicopters. They're always there. There's a great book. It's called A Radical Awakening by Dr. Shafali. One of the best books I've ever read. Game changer. But we see the ego in the spiritual community sometimes as a bad thing. It's not. It's there to keep us safe. Just as we would never want to lose our sense of touch because we wouldn't be able to know if something was too hot or too cold. The ego and our feelings are there to say, hey, I'm not aligned right now. I'm not aligned. But when we understand where it comes from, we won't judge it. And we are prisoners and jailers all at once in our head. We keep ourselves in this prison. We repeat the same things over and over again. Oh, something keeps happening to me in my life to make me feel gaslighted. Yeah, because you're looking for it. Not here. It's subconscious. You're looking for it because familiarity is safe to people. And if your parents treated you like that, or you didn't feel heard, or you weren't able to express yourself, the ego will form a shield in the form of an egoic archetype. And it's important to understand that we shouldn't judge this.
Exactly. So this is, you've just said it. It's important to not judge, because what we're outlining here is we're not saying it's your fault you can't see it. It's what we're saying is that these are the vulnerabilities of humanity, and we can fall into these traps unconsciously. And when we fall into these traps unconsciously, we don't realize it. But when we talk about the law of attraction, well, this is the law of attraction. We are going to recognize what's familiar to us. And we need to understand that when we recognize what's familiar to us, it becomes attractive to us. We don't want it consciously, but subconsciously we recognize it and it feels familiar. And therefore, this is what we know what to do. This is not, it's not because we are masochists. It's because this is the way it works. This is the way the mind works. And so what we need to do is we need to step back and start recognizing those patterns and start recognizing and making the links between them. Sometimes people don't, and they come for therapy, and I sit with them and I'm listening to them and I can connect the dots and they can't yet. And so then it's a process of asking questions, and then it's like a light bulb. Oh, I never saw that. I didn't see how the two are linked, but yeah, maybe they are. And so then begins change. So yes, we can break out of these patterns the minute we recognize them consciously and start attending to the needs that were not being met because this was all that we knew. So it's huge, and and this is what I love about your work, is that you understand that, and in your understanding, you're empowering women so that they can make the best decisions for them. So this is what's so exciting about what you do. It excites me because I recognize it. It's what I do in my own way. So this is has been a beautiful conversation, Nickita. How do women find you? And actually, incidentally, we've been talking about women, but maybe before we stop, I spend a lot of time working with husbands so that they can help their wives, their partners. Um, and I have a lot to say to men to help them. What would you say? Because I bet you're working with fathers too.
Yes, I do. Um, just allow your partner to feel safe. Listen to her. Birth doesn't need fixing. It's an experience. And just take some time to be. When everyone trains with us, I give them one of these bands, right? You won't be able to see it very clearly, but on it, it says, I'm safe, I'm loved, I'm wise. And that's my mantra for all my students. Look at it every day. I am safe, I'm loved, I'm wise. If you can provide that environment for your wife, for your girlfriend, where she feels safe and loved and wise, she'll have a lovely birth. But and everything that comes before, if you feel safe, loved, and wise in any given moment, you will be able to access what you need in any given moment, be it nutrition or moving away from people that no longer serve you, or listening to the monkey mind, the or the fear. We can't, we cannot fix this world with more fear. As Einstein said, you cannot solve a problem from the same level of energy that created it. So we've got all these amazing people in the freedom movement, misguided on Instagram, bloody vaccine injuries, bloody. No, we don't need more division. We need unity. And people will never change their mind from force. People will only come to a light bulb moment through love and loving themselves and self acceptance. And I truly believe that peace on earth begins at birth. If we can get this right, we can change so much. And if you're a bloke listening to this and you think it doesn't concern me, it does. We all have mothers. We all know someone's about to give birth, and you might not want to come and train with me and change the world one birth at a time. But you can say to someone, hey, do you know you have a choice? Go to whenpushcomestosshove.co.uk. And we're here to hold and support you and empower you in your decisions through love. There's no force here. No one's going to tell you what to do. It's about you. And this is how we change the world. We need to change consciousness through love, not fear.
Well, I can't think of a better way to end our conversation. Thank you so much. And just to remind everyone, the website is When Push Comes to Shove, and I'll be putting a link to that in the description box. Nickita, thank you so much. I'm also going to be putting a link to the books that you mentioned.
We also
Well,
have a Substack, which is, there's two parts to it. There's the When Push Comes to Shove, that's all about birth. You can subscribe for free or pay £5 a month to help me to support my work. And there's another section, and it's called the Unity Project. This is not about birth. This is about creating consciousness through love, self-development, exploration. I'm not a therapist, by the way, but I'm an experienced coach because I have to coach all my students, coach all the ladies that come to me. It's about critical thinking and using a level from here so to beautifully align these together. So if you're interested, please look up the Unity Project on Substack and find me there. Thank you.
wonderful. And thank you all for watching. I'm sure that you have been greatly inspired by Nickita, as I always am when I hear her. And next time, we're going to be looking at relationships. Until then, goodbye.